In a few minutes, we're going to be leaving New Mexico after an amazing journey taking St. Francis through the desert, all the way from Phoenix here. We're heading on the train to Kansas City next, but wow, what an amazing journey. This morning, for example, our dear friend Robin took us to Santa Fe Sol, where she gave us an IV of vitamin C, acupuncture, what else? Tesla lights and things that I don't even understand, just to kind of boost our energy and keep us healthy. Now here we are in Lamy, New Mexico, where we met some incredible people at the train station and shared some music. St. Francis, I think, would be very happy with the experience that we had here in the desert. And now we're heading to the Midwest.
Last night I had a dream, stranger than I can say.
Leaving the desert is always like an initiation. For St. Francis, the desert was his former life, the life of the popular young man everyone looked up to. Suddenly he was homeless and ridiculed, walking out of Assisi naked and alone. But he was really stepping into his true life, the one he imagined in his dreams or when he heard Christ speak to him in the chapel of San Damiano. As for me, leaving Santa Fe and heading to Kansas City initiated a new phase in my journey. We were in the Midwest now, heading into both familiar and unfamiliar territory.
He put his hand upon the wood, and the stone began to lift.
On the way to Unity Village, where I would perform the musical later that night, we were greeted by temples and landmarks from a wide variety of spiritual and religious groups, including the Community of Christ Temple Tower, which rose high above Independence, Missouri. Unity Village lay quiet and still beneath a blanket of clouds, but the strong energy was palpable. The Unity movement was founded in 1889 by Charles and Myrtle Fillmore and has spread throughout the whole world, but the village outside Kansas City is ground zero. The performance was less attended than most of the others on the tour, but it was a suitable beginning to the third phase of our journey. The next stop was St. Louis, and as we caught sight of the famous arch, we could feel the energy building. The visit started with an interview at the biggest talk radio station in the city, KMOX.
Welcome to KMOX Profiles. I'm Debbie Monterey, and welcome to St. Louis, James Twyman.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Now, you have so many different things I could introduce you as. You are a New York Times best-selling author. But perhaps the thing that if I were you, I'd put on my business card would be Peace Troubadour, because I've never met someone who calls himself a Peace Troubadour. Can you explain?
It's unique. I've had the great privilege of being able to travel around the world to many countries at war or conflict, sharing a peace concert that I wrote, I guess, back in 1994, when in 1 hour I put the 12 peace prayers from the 12 major religions of the world to music.
Wow, that is fascinating. All right, well, you are in St. Louis, and you've come here from where? Because you are getting around the country these days, hitchhiking and relying on the kindness of strangers.
That's right. We haven't had to hitchhike yet because the kindness of strangers has been so great, but we are traveling from the West Coast to the East Coast penniless, with no credit cards, no money, nothing, relying totally on people's generosity.
Woe, divine master, grant that we may not seek to be consoled as to console. To be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. We are now your instruments, beloved.
is who we should all be. I mean, he truly behaves in the way that I feel God meant us to behave.
Well, St. Francis to me is always I don't know a lot about St. Francis. He's what I hear James say is like the garden saint. He's the one with the birds on his, I always thought he was the animal saint, and I loved him because I love animals. But I really don't know a lot about him other than his drive for peace, which I love.
Who is St. Francis to you?
He's the patron saint of all the animals and the love in the world and things like that.
So St. Francis I fell in love with at a very young age, going to Catholic school. So, we read books about the saints and things like that. The saint of peace and compassion, and he's, so connected to the animal kingdom. That's really all that I think. I just think of a very, soft saint who was able to rally interest, not by being loud or coercive, but just by being kind of who he was.
The next morning we were off for what would prove to be the most personally impactful stop on the tour, Holy Family Parish in Peoria, Illinois. When I was 12, my family moved to Peoria, where I attended Holy Family grade school and served as an altar boy at the church. Memories came flooding back as Father Paul Joseph, the pastor at Holy Family, took us on a tour.
Here we are, cafeteria.
Here are all the Wall of Fame.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So, okay.
You graduated in 76?
I graduated in, I think, 76. So,
That's the...
let me see here. Yeah, this. Oh my gosh, I remember him. Oh, there I am. Right there. That's me. The class of 1976. I don't know. Is the teacher on here?
I don't know if they put teacher probably not.
So we lived here in Peoria when I was in 7th grade, 8th grade, and then my freshman year in high school. Then we moved to Michigan. But of the 3 high schools I went to in 3 different states, Bergen was my favorite.
What was that?
I got into theater. Now here I am acting, but that's the first time I ever did that. I was in Godspell when I was a freshman, and I think 1 or 2 other things, and that's where that bug hit me. I realized here at Holy Family I was not cut out to be a basketball player.
Yeah, exactly. There was no three-point line, but I do remember being right here in the corner. It was just about like this. Oh no, not even close. Age does that to you. There it is. There it is.
A lot of people ask me how I first fell in love with St. Francis, and it happened mainly in this church because I was an altar boy, and I don't think we had a statue like this one of St. Francis, but for some reason that day during Mass, I had a holy card with St. Francis. And I think it was during the sermon, I was sitting there and I just took this out and I was looking at it. And as I looked at this card, something happened. One of those mystical experiences you can't really describe, but it was as if this glow began to take over and the picture seemed to grow brighter and I could feel something happening inside me, and this love and this devotion just overcame me. And I never forgot it, and I think I decided in that moment that I wanted to follow Francis in one way or another. Of course, right out of high school, I joined the Franciscan Order. But it was in this church, so when you called me, and I get this message on my phone saying I'm from Holy Family Church, it's like, you've got to be kidding me. Good evening. It all started right there. Sitting in that chair as an altar boy at Holy Family Church in Peoria, Illinois.
It's incredible to come back here. Because from that moment on, a love affair with Francis and Claire began. I remember when you called me, I was lying on the ground, so lost my eyes could barely see, and my ears heard not a sound. Then in the quiet of that small chapel, I felt my heart rejoice. For then I saw you stand before me and heard the whisper of your voice. When I first joined the Franciscans in 1980, I was also walking every day here to Loyola University, where I was educated by the Jesuits. And so that energy between the Franciscans and the Jesuits, the heart and then the mind, it seemed to bring a balance within me that helped me to really understand the life of St. Francis even more. The past is collapsing all around me. What once seemed solid and sure now appears like flimsy movie sets without substance or reality. I visit the homes and bedrooms of my former life, and it feels like a different person lived there, not the fully shaped person I am now. It makes me question who I am, what I've become, and where I'm going. Will I look back years from now and have the same impression, asking the same questions of the one who is sitting in this place? The question, who am I, takes root in my consciousness and overwhelms all these concepts. The truth has nothing to do with my past or my future, but who I am in this moment. In this moment, I am free. In this moment, I am awake. It doesn't matter if the buildings and shapes have changed. Who I am right now is eternal and eternally grateful. It's always amazing to come back to the house of studies that I lived at 40 years ago. Do you believe that? Most of you weren't even born. Were any of you born 40 years ago? None of you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
We're both
Barely.
40. Yeah.
Just barely.
I'm 42. Yeah.
Okay. So you were a couple of years old when I lived here, and now you're postulants, as I was. And I'm just curious. I know how I came and who Francis was to me, but I'm just curious. Let's begin with you. Who was Francis? Who is Francis to you, and how did he call you to become a Franciscan?
Well, for me, St. Francis was definitely an inspiration from him. Just the example of his really, every part of him and his message to me shows his radical love for God. And the biggest thing for me is for him and his story with him embracing the leper and reaching out to the outcasts and all that really drew me to, seek out a life to where I can give myself to serving the needy and serving the poor.
I first encountered Francis when I was preparing for confirmation. I didn't know who he was. I just remember having this prayer book and looking at the saint with the birds and the flowers and the animals. But on the side there was a prayer that said, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Obviously, we most of us know that prayer now. But to me, he was a man of peace at that time when I was a younger kid. And throughout the ages, I've learned that he's a man of action. He's not just a person who's praying, but he comes to embrace the leopard. He comes to embrace the poor. He comes to embrace his own sinfulness. And that, to me, attracts me to him.
It's not that I don't expect to see someone as physically fit as you here, but obviously you lived a full life before you came to the Franciscans. So what drew you to this life?
It was like 5 years ago is when I got baptized, and when I went through RCIA, I also learned prayer that started, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. And I didn't really know who that prayer was by, but when I was getting baptized, I prayed that prayer during my baptism. And then not that long afterwards, I met a Franciscan, and I started learning more and more about the friars. And I don't know, I really fell in love with St. Francis, and man, really giving his all to the service of the poor and being a saint. I just want to be the best disciple of my Lord Jesus Christ that I can be. And for me, I think it's to be a friar.
So I'm curious, you only were baptized 5 years ago, and here you are now living this radically different life. You must have really felt transformed by that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I learned finished up college, and then went on a couple of come and see retreats, which I'm sure you did as well. Yep. So I got to learn all about the friars during then, and it's been a wonderful journey. And man, so happy to be here and be with the friars and learn more about Francis.
It's amazing.
Yeah.